for being here. And Mr. McDonnell, why don't you begin?
Great, thanks for having me. This has been a really interesting conversation this morning, and I think I've solved a couple of my personal problems. Not personal so much, professional problems. Um, Raising the alcohol tax would be wonderful, and if you could give a portion of that funding to transportation, that would be quite amazing, since our highway trust fund seems to be falling short every year at the federal level. Um, and I have to say, with regard to $2 Chuck, for anybody who's familiar, it's $3 Chuck now. They increased it 50%. Nobody blinked an eye. So apparently, a little bit of tax increase isn't going to hurt too much. So I am with AASHTO, big long name, but basically our members are the state departments of transportation, so the state DOTs around the country. So the 50 states, DC and Puerto Rico. And we cover a wide range of issues in all modes of transportation. So it's not just highways, it's transit, it's rail, it's water and aviation. From the highway perspective, though, that is the biggest chunk of what the DOTs do. Um, in my office, we help them from the technical perspective. So it's everything from planning, designing, constructing, operating, maintaining. The highways and streets is our biggest focus. And we do also do policy work, but from a technical perspective, we have over 200 individual publications, so design guidance, technical manuals, best practices, the standards, specifications to assist with the task that the state DOTs undertake every day. I do want to note that AASHTO does not have a regulatory role. So we are a membership organization. We're not government, we're not federal government, although we are a national organization. We work on behalf of the state DOTs, so we help them develop technical standards and guidance that they voluntarily use, or in some cases the federal government will mandate or require for a specific issue. So for example, the geometric design standards that we produce are required by the federal government for all roads on the national highway system, so the highest level transportation facilities around the country. But our organization doesn't have a mandating or policing aspect to it. From a safety perspective, what we do is we support state efforts through peer exchanges, sharing information about what states are doing. They learn probably best from each other. We do research. We have actually in this building is something called the National Cooperative Highway Research Program, which is run by the Transportation Research Board. The state DOTs contribute $30+ million a year to that program, and then they select and prioritize what they think are the highest needed research problem statements each year to look into, and safety is usually a big portion of that. We help support safety countermeasures through some of our technical standards, as well as products that have been produced through the NCHRP process. And we also coordinate at a national level with other similar organizations like the Governor's Highway Safety Association, the Commercial Vehicle Safety Alliance, the Safe States Alliance, and others. So you've probably seen this chart before. I heard earlier that NHTSA has a statistic that 94% of crashes are the driver has a contributing factor. This chart is from the 70s, late 70s, 93%. So obviously things haven't changed a whole heck of a lot. So what we look at, by and large, at AASHTO and the state DOTs is the infrastructure side of the equation, but we all are also, to a lesser extent, involved in the human factors discussion. Half of the state DOTs have the Governor's Highway Safety Office within the DOT. In the other states, it's a separate agency that's overseen directly by the governor. And we also have been, in the past 5 to 10 years, been collaborating quite a bit with vehicle manufacturers and their associations from a policy perspective, but also from a technical perspective more recently as technological advancements have occurred through connected and autonomous vehicles. So from a state DOT perspective, the fundamental safety document within each state is the Strategic Highway Safety Plan. And this plan dictates, it's the umbrella plan that you have to have a strategy in this plan in order to spend your federal safety and improvement program funds. So each state has this strategic highway safety plan. It identifies the key safety needs. It's a state DOT-led effort, but it is collaborative and it's multidisciplinary. So it's a wide range of folks that include outside groups, enforcement, behavioral scientists, commercial vehicle operators, driver education specialists, a whole wide range of folks who are coming together to help develop this safety plan for each state. What they typically come up with is their emphasis areas for a 5-year period, and they focus on them. You can see at a national level, those are the five, the current top 5 emphasis areas. You see impaired driving is in that top 5. So one of the, I'll just throw it out here now, one of the concerns that we had recently from a safety perspective was a change in legislation in the FAST Act, which is the most recent federal transportation funding act, where highway safety improvement program funds were restricted. The behavioral side, it was restricted from the behavioral side. So the FAST Act suddenly said, the goal of the program is to, and I'll quote, achieve a significant reduction in traffic fatalities and serious injuries on all public roads through the implementation of infrastructure-related highway safety improvements. And that was kind of a hit to some of the DOTs who'd been using some of that funding for messaging and information campaigns and other efforts at the state level related to things such as impaired driving. So you may have heard about Towards Zero Deaths or something similar. There are a number of different programs out there, Vision Zero Network. They're not all the same, but Road to Zero is a newer one. They're not all the same, but they have basically a similar goal. TZD is a program that AASHTO's been involved with for quite a long time. We think of it as the Strategic Highway Safety Plan at the national level. We had a number of organizations adopt it, so it was a collaborative effort at the national level. So the Motor Vehicle Administrators, AASHTO, the Commercial Vehicle Safety Alliance, the Governor's Highway Safety Association, the Chiefs of Police, the county engineers, state emergency medical service officials, they all came together, helped develop this, this approach, and adopted the TZD report as their strategic policy plan. One of the questions I was asked in the notes that were sent to me was some of the challenges that we see. One of the challenges I think with the TZD effort is the fact that it's an aspirational goal. You're really looking to eliminate all traffic deaths. I would think for the first couple of years that's a great and very exciting thing to promote, and then I can see where after a while it gets you know, you're not achieving your goal. It's hard to keep up the momentum. It's hard to keep up the excitement. So you do need those more achievable goals in the interim to help take steps along the way. Some of the state DOTs actually were concerned about that very fact. They didn't want to adopt a Towards Zero Deaths, a zero death goal, because they said we can't achieve that. How are we going to do that? So that was a struggle, and then focusing folks, state agencies are big ships. It's hard to steer them and steer the funding to something new and different. So that's been a challenge as well. So let me quickly go through a couple of detailed slides on infrastructure and then behavioral, infrastructure and vehicles, excuse me. So we have some of the typical solutions that we have in our highway safety manual and some of the NCHRP reports that have been developed with the state DOT funding. Things like cable median barrier to help prevent crossover crashes, intersection improvements, wrong way entry treatments. So some states are experimenting with flashing signs along the ramp if somebody enters a ramp in the wrong direction, and then changeable message signs downstream that would say, be alert, there's a car on the facility going the wrong way. Um, which I'm sure would be an exciting message to get as you look up at the sign. So these types of infrastructure treatments, the safety edge is just a 30-degree edge of pavement, so that if your car goes onto the shoulder and there's a drop off from rain or other erosion, you can get back on the road safely instead of getting the wheel caught and potentially flipping the car. So there are a bunch of these infrastructure countermeasures that help drivers overall. They're not specifically aimed toward alcohol impaired driving, but they do assist with driving in general, and by extension, they do help with folks who are impaired. One of the most recent, it's 2010, the Highway Safety Manual up in the upper right-hand corner, is the first time that we were able to, and this was done through NCHRP. It was 10 years of research, and we're continually expanding it, but it allows engineers and designers to actually quantify the safety benefits of the choices they're making when they're doing geometric design and they're proposing safety improvements like guardrail or that sort of thing. So they actually can get numbers out of it, they can get calculations, and then as they're analyzing various options for a new facility or for a modified facility, they can show how the project is getting safer through fewer injuries or fewer deaths from a statistical standpoint. Safer vehicles, as I mentioned earlier, in the past several years, we've started coordinating with more non-traditional stakeholders that the DOTs aren't used to working with so much. The car manufacturers, ITE America, which is the ITS America, the Intelligent Transportation Society of America, the Institute of Transportation Engineers, and we're working on technological advances, both in vehicle as well as between vehicles and between the vehicles and the infrastructure. This isn't a DOT's primary charge, but making sure that the vehicles, for example, some of the autonomous vehicles that are being proposed, we have industry coming to us saying you need to make those lane lines perfect everywhere. They need to be bright and they need to be readable. And then we have a northern state come to us and say, yeah, we plow those off pretty much every winter. So it's hard to keep a perfectly bright line that an autonomous vehicle can read in every instance. So there are challenges there technically. And then connected vehicles, we think, have a strong role to play, even beyond the autonomous. The autonomous can see around them, but the connected vehicles can talk to each other. And one of the things I was thinking about in rural areas, because you do have a lot of fatalities in rural areas because you have long distances of two-lane roads. I know when I lived in North Carolina, there was it wasn't an unwritten rule, there was the occasional situation where you're coming toward a stop sign in a very rural area. It's an intersection of two very rural roads. If you hear somebody honking the horn, you know they're not going to stop for that stop sign. They're just warning you ahead of time. So with connected vehicles, those vehicles would be able to talk. One vehicle would be able to find out from the other, they don't seem to be slowing down. Maybe there would be automatic braking on one vehicle or the other in order to accommodate that. So that's kind of a rural example. From the urban perspective, it's seeing around corners and being able to anticipate a car popping out from around a building. But we have been working, we have a vehicle to infrastructure deployment coalition. We also have an executive leadership team working with folks in the industry, in that industry. So this is my last slide. I was asked, what do we need? Funding is one of them. So the pitch: funding for everything, funding for enforcement, funding for new research, funding for implementation of great ideas. in some cases, from the state DOT perspective, some folks see this particular issue as a behavioral issue, um, but a lot of the other work that they're doing helps contribute to the solution. So maybe they're not targeting alcohol impairment directly through the infrastructure, but it is helping. And in many states, they are working with external stakeholders on like work zone enforcement and sobriety checks and communication and information campaigns, that sort of thing. So I will stop there and
Great. Thank you so much. That's very informative.